My dad texted me at 2 a.m. Grab your sister and run. Don't trust your mother. So I did. The phone screen burned my eyes in the darkness. 3 sentences that made no sense until they made all the sense in the world. My father had been on a business trip in Seattle for 4 days, the kind of trip he took monthly for his consulting firm, always professional and predictable. He never texted after 10 at night, never used urgent language, never said anything that would alarm us. This message violated everything I knew about my careful, measured father, which meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. I was 17 and responsible enough to know when adults were overreacting versus when they were genuinely terrified. This text read like genuine terror compressed into 12 words. I threw off my blankets and grabbed clothes from the floor, pulling on jeans and a sweatshirt while my brain tried to process what "don't trust your mother" could possibly mean. Mom was downstairs in the living room where I'd left her an hour ago, watching some crime documentary and drinking wine like she did most nights, normal suburban mother behavior. Nothing threatening or suspicious. Except Dad wouldn't send this message without reason, and the specificity of grabbing my sister and running suggested immediate danger, not paranoid delusion. I shoved my feet into sneakers and grabbed my backpack, dumping out textbooks and replacing them with my laptop, phone charger, and the emergency cash I kept hidden in my desk drawer for reasons I'd never quite articulated. $300 in 20s that suddenly felt like the most important thing I owned. My sister Becca was 12 and slept like the dead, completely undisturbed by my frantic movement in the next room. I crept down the hallway and eased open her door, wincing when the hinges creaked. She was buried under blankets with just her dark hair visible, breathing in the steady rhythm of deep sleep. Waking her quietly would be nearly impossible, but waking her loudly would alert Mom downstairs, and Dad's message had been explicit about not trusting her. And I knelt beside Becca's bed and pressed my hand over her mouth before shaking her shoulder. Her eyes flew open in panic, and I felt her try to scream against my palm. I put my finger to my lips and whispered directly into her ear, barely audible even in the silent room. Dad sent an emergency message. We need to leave right now without Mom knowing. I'll explain everything once we're safe, but you have to trust me and stay completely silent. Becca's eyes were huge with fear and confusion, but she nodded against my hand. I released her mouth and she sat up, reaching for her glasses on the nightstand. I'd already grabbed clothes from her closet, jeans and a hoodie that I pressed into her hands while gesturing urgently for her to change. She pulled on the clothes over her pajamas, her hands shaking, and I stuffed her feet into the nearest shoes without bothering to tie the laces properly. The window in Becca's room faced the backyard and had a screen I'd removed dozens of times for sneaking out to meet friends. I popped it free with practiced ease and looked down at the 8-foot drop to the garden below. Not ideal, but manageable, especially with the flower bed providing softer landing than concrete. I threw both our backpacks out first, watching them land in the mulch, then helped Becca climb through the window frame. She hesitated at the edge, looking down at the drop with visible fear. I gripped her wrists and lowered her as far as I could reach before letting go, and she fell the remaining 4 feet with a muted thump that sounded explosively loud in the quiet night. I followed immediately after, dropping and rolling to absorb the impact, my ankle twisting slightly on landing, but holding my weight when I stood. Becca was staring at me with questions written across her face, but I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back fence. We had maybe minutes before Mom checked on us or heard something suspicious. The fence was 6 feet of privacy wood that I scaled by stepping on the decorative crossbeam, pulling myself over the top and dropping into the neighbor's yard. Becca struggled more with the height, but I coached her through it, catching her when she dropped down beside me. We ran through 3 backyards before emerging onto a street 2 blocks from our house, both of us breathing hard. Only then did I pull out my phone and read Dad's message again, looking for details I'd missed in my panic. The timestamp showed 2:03 a.m., sent 7 minutes ago. No follow-up messages, no missed calls, just those 3 sentences hanging in digital space like a grenade. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. His professional outgoing message incongruous with the emergency he'd declared. Becca was pulling on my sleeve, demanding explanations I didn't have, her voice rising toward panic. I showed her the text and watched her face go pale even in the dim streetlight. What does he mean, don't trust Mom? What's happening? I don't know yet, but Dad wouldn't say this unless it was serious. We need to get somewhere safe and figure out what's going on. I was trying to sound calm and in control despite having no plan beyond getting away from our house. We were standing on a residential street at 2 in the morning with nowhere to go and no way to contact the one parent who'd warned us to run. My phone buzzed with a new text, this time from Mom. Where are you girls? I heard noises upstairs. The casual tone felt wrong given the circumstances, like she was pretending nothing unusual was happening. Or maybe nothing unusual was happening from her perspective. Maybe Dad's message was the aberration, and Mom was genuinely confused about missing daughters. But I kept thinking about those 12 words, the specificity of the warning, the fact that Dad's phone was now off. Another text from Mom appeared before I could decide how to respond. This isn't funny. Come downstairs right now or I'm calling the police. The threat landed strangely because what would she tell the police? That her teenage daughters had left the house at night? We weren't missing or kidnapped. We'd left voluntarily based on our father's warning. Unless Mom had reasons to want police involvement, unless she was trying to force us back under some kind of official authority. Becca was crying quietly, the kind of scared tears that come from being 12 and having your normal life explode at 2 in the morning. I put my arm around her shoulders and kept walking, moving us toward the 24-hour convenience store 3 blocks away. At least there we'd have lights and potential witnesses, some minimal safety while I figured out next steps. My phone kept buzzing with messages from Mom, each one escalating in tone from confused to angry to threatening. The convenience store was nearly empty except for a bored clerk scrolling through his phone behind bulletproof glass. Becca and I huddled in the back corner near the refrigerated drinks, trying to look casual despite being 2 teenage girls alone at 2 a.m. I called Dad again with the same result, straight to voicemail. His phone definitely powered off. I tried texting instead, asking for more information, explaining we'd gotten out but needed to know what was happening. My phone rang and Mom's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it through 3 rings before answering, putting it on speaker so Becca could hear Mom's voice came through tight with barely controlled emotion. "Where are you? What's going on?" I wake up and both my daughters are gone. Windows open. "You're not answering texts." "You're scaring me, honey." She sounded genuinely frightened and confused, nothing in her tone suggesting danger or threat, but Dad's message kept echoing in my mind, the urgency and specificity that had sent us running. "Dad texted us," I said carefully, watching Becca's face for reactions. "He said to leave the house and not trust you. We need to know why he'd say that." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then Mom laughed, this brittle sound that raised every hair on my neck. "Your father texted you at 2 in the morning telling you to run away from me? That's insane. He's in Seattle at a conference, probably drunk at some hotel bar. He doesn't know what he's saying. But I'd never seen Dad drunk in my life. He barely drank even at parties. And the message hadn't read drunk. It had read terrified. Why would he specifically say not to trust you? What's he afraid you're going to do?" Mom's breathing got faster on the line, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed into something harder. "Listen to me very carefully. Your father is having some kind of mental break. He's been acting paranoid for weeks, saying strange things, accusing me of things that aren't true. I didn't want to worry you girls, but he's been seeing a therapist for delusions. Whatever he told you is part of that. You need to come home right now so we can handle this as a family." The explanation sounded reasonable, except for the timing. If Dad had been delusional for weeks, why send the emergency text tonight? Why turn off his phone after sending it if he was just drunk and confused? And why did Mom's voice sound wrong, like she was performing concern rather than feeling it? I looked at Becca and saw my own doubt reflected in her expression. "I want to talk to Dad first," I said. "I want to hear from him that he's okay, and that the message was a mistake. Then we'll come home." Mom made a frustrated sound, and I heard movement on her end, footsteps and the jingle of car keys. "Fine, stay where you are and I'll come get you. We'll call Dad together from the car and sort this out. Where are you exactly?" Every instinct I had screamed not to tell her, not to give up our location until I understood what was happening. "We're at a friend's house. We'll come home when we've talked to Dad." I hung up before she could respond and immediately powered off my phone, suddenly paranoid about location tracking. Becca did the same without me asking, both of us operating on the same frequency of distrust. The convenience store clerk was watching us now with open suspicion, probably wondering if he should call the police about 2 teenage girls acting sketchy in his store. At 2 a.m. I grabbed 2 bottles of water and paid with cash, trying to look normal and unhurried. We needed to move, but I had no idea where to go. Dad's message had said run, but hadn't specified a destination. Hadn't given us a safe house or contact information beyond that initial warning. Becca grabbed my arm as we left the store, pointing back toward where we'd come from. A car was driving slowly down the street, headlights off, moving like it was searching for something. Even from 2 blocks away, I recognized Mom's silver SUV, the one she drove to her real estate job and soccer practices. She was hunting for us, had somehow guessed or tracked that we'd be in this area. We ducked behind a parked truck and watched the SUV cruise past, Mom's profile visible through the driver's window. Her face was illuminated by her phone screen, and the expression I saw there wasn't worried mother, it was cold calculation. She turned the corner and we ran in the opposite direction, staying low behind parked cars until we reached the next major intersection. A bus stop shelter provided temporary cover, and I tried to think through our options logically. Dad was unreachable. Mom was actively hunting us, and we had nowhere to go except the homes of friends whose parents would immediately call our mother. We needed an adult who would listen to the full situation before making judgments, someone with authority, but no pre-existing loyalty to Mom. My phone powered back on and immediately started buzzing with messages. Most were from Mom with increasingly frantic tone, but one was from an unknown number. "This is Special Agent Victoria Reeves with the FBI. Your father asked me to contact you if anything happened to him. Call this number immediately from a secure line. Do not go home. Do not trust local police." The message was so unexpected, so outside the realm of normal possibility, that I read it 3 times before my brain accepted the words. FBI involvement suggested crimes way beyond family drama. Suggested Dad's warning had been about something bigger than mental breaks or marital problems. Becca read over my shoulder, and her face went even paler. Why would Dad be talking to the FBI? What did Mom do? She was asking the questions I was thinking but couldn't voice. I called the number from the message using the convenience store's payphone, paranoid now about phone tracking. A woman answered on the second ring, her voice professional and alert despite the hour. This is Agent Reeves. Who am I speaking with? This is Zoe Brennan. You sent a message about my father, Kevin Brennan. He texted us tonight telling us to leave our house and not trust our mother. We need to know what's happening. Agent Reeves was quiet for a moment, and I heard keyboard clicking in the background, like she was pulling up files or verifying information. Your father has been cooperating with a federal investigation into financial crimes for the past 3 months. He discovered evidence that your mother is involved in a sophisticated fraud scheme moving money through her real estate business. We've been building a case, but tonight our surveillance team lost contact with your father. His last communication was sending you that text message before his phone went dark. The words landed like physical blows, and I grabbed the payphone cradle to steady myself. Mom wasn't just having marital problems or acting strange. She was a criminal under federal investigation. Dad had been secretly working with the FBI, gathering evidence against his own wife, and something had gone wrong tonight that triggered his emergency warning. Where is he now? Is he safe? Agent Reeves hesitated before answering. We don't know. He was supposed to check in 3 hours ago from his hotel in Seattle, and didn't. His phone location last pinged at the hotel, then went offline. We have agents checking the hotel now, but his failure to communicate combined with that text to you suggests he believed himself to be in immediate danger. Becca was gripping my sleeve so tight her fingers hurt, listening to my half of the conversation with growing horror. What kind of danger? Why would Mom hurt him? But even as I asked, I was remembering things that had seemed normal at the time but took on sinister meaning in this new context. Mom's frequent unexplained absences, her defensive reaction when Dad asked about her business accounts, the way she'd started password protecting everything on her phone and computer. The people your mother is working with are not the kind to leave witnesses if they think their operation is compromised. If they learned your father was cooperating with our investigation, he would become a liability to eliminate. And if they've gotten to him, you and your sister are potential witnesses who know his routines and could identify associates. That's why his message told you to run. The full weight of danger settled over me, and I understood suddenly why Dad had been so specific, so urgent in his middle-of-the-night text. We weren't running from normal family dysfunction. We were running from people who murdered witnesses to financial crimes. What do we do? Where do we go? Agent Reeves gave me an address for an FBI field office 30 miles north. Get there as fast as you can without using credit cards or your phones except for emergency calls. If you see your mother or anyone suspicious, call 911 immediately. I'm dispatching agents to pick you up, but they're 45 minutes out. You need to stay hidden and moving until they arrive. I hung up and relayed everything to Becca, watching her face cycle through disbelief and fear and finally grim acceptance. At 12, she was processing that our mother was a criminal. Our father was missing and potentially dead, and we were running from people who killed witnesses. It was too much for anyone, but especially for a kid who'd gone to bed thinking about homework and friend drama. A taxi company operated out of the strip mall across the street, and we walked there quickly, constantly scanning for Mom's silver SUV. The dispatcher was half asleep, but agreed to send a car to our location, asking for destination. I gave him an address 2 blocks from the FBI field office, paranoid about giving exact locations even to seemingly innocent taxi companies. The taxi arrived 15 minutes later, a beat-up sedan driven by a man who looked annoyed at being woken for a fare this far out. Becca and I climbed in the back, and I handed him cash up front, asking him to drive carefully and avoid the main roads. He gave me a strange look but pocketed the money and pulled out of the lot. We'd made it maybe 3 miles when headlights appeared behind us, coming up fast. The taxi driver noticed and swore, accelerating slightly. Some asshole's been following us since we left. Probably drunk idiots playing games. But I twisted around to look and recognized Mom's SUV, close enough now that I could see her face through the windshield, set and determined. That's our mother, I said to the driver. She's dangerous. We need to lose her right now. He looked at me like I was insane until Mom's SUV rammed us from behind, hard enough to throw both Becca and me forward against the front seats. The driver swore louder and floored it, the old taxi responding sluggishly as Mom hit us again. We were on a semi-rural road with minimal traffic, exactly the wrong place for a chase scene. Mom pulled alongside us, and I could see her clearly now. Her face twisted into something I didn't recognize. She was trying to force us off the road, her SUV heavier and more powerful than the taxi. The driver was panicking, swerving wildly, trying to keep control while Mom repeatedly slammed into our passenger side. Becca was screaming, and I was on my phone calling 911, shouting our location and situation to a dispatcher who kept asking me to slow down and repeat myself. Mom made one more hard slam, and the taxi spun out, rotating twice before sliding off the road into a shallow ditch. The impact threw us around the interior despite seatbelts, my head connecting with the window hard enough to see stars. Mom's SUV screeched to a stop, and I watched her climb out, walking toward our crashed taxi with purpose. The driver was slumped over the steering wheel, dazed or unconscious, and Becca was crying beside me. I grabbed her hand and kicked open the door on the far side, dragging her out and into the drainage ditch running alongside the road. We ran through brush and darkness while Mom shouted behind us, her voice carrying across the quiet night. "Girls, stop! I'm trying to protect you. The FBI is lying. Your father is lying. I just need to talk to you." But her actions didn't match her words, didn't match someone trying to protect rather than harm. The drainage ditch connected to a culvert running under the road, and we crawled through it, emerging on the far side muddy and scraped. Behind us, I could hear sirens approaching, the 911 call finally producing response. Mom must have heard them too, because her shouting stopped and I heard her SUV engine start, tires squealing as she fled the scene. Police cars arrived with lights flashing, officers jumping out to check the crashed taxi and search the area. We emerged from the culvert with hands raised, shouting that we'd called 911 and we were the victims. One officer approached carefully, hand on his weapon, while his partner checked the taxi driver who was coming around slowly. I explained everything in a rush while Becca cried against my shoulder. The officer looked skeptical until I mentioned FBI Special Agent Victoria Reeves by name and showed him the text from Dad. His expression changed and he radioed something coded to his dispatcher before telling us to wait in his patrol car while he verified our story. 20 minutes later, black SUVs arrived with federal agents who showed badges and took custody of us from the local police. Agent Reeves was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. She wrapped emergency blankets around both of us and guided us into one of the vehicles. "Your father is alive," she said immediately, and I felt something in my chest unclench. "He was attacked in his hotel room tonight but fought off his assailants and escaped. He's in protective custody and asking about you two. Your mother's associates failed to kill him, so they shifted to targeting you girls, probably hoping to use you as leverage to keep your father from testifying." Becca was crying harder now, relief mixed with exhaustion and trauma. "Where's Mom? Did you arrest her?" Agent Reeves shook her head grimly. "She fled the scene before local police could detain her. We have warrants out now for attempted murder, assault, fraud, and about a dozen other charges. Every law enforcement agency in the state is looking for her, but she's proven to be very good at disappearing when she wants to." The drive to the FBI field office passed in a blur of exhaustion and shock. They processed us through security and took our statements separately, recording everything about the night and Mom's behavior. Someone brought food and coffee and blankets, treating us like fragile things that might break with rough handling. Dad arrived around dawn, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. His face was bruised, his left arm in a sling, and he moved like his ribs hurt. But when he saw us in the conference room, he broke down completely, pulling both of us into a careful hug that made Becca sob into his chest. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry I put you through this. I thought I could handle it quietly. I thought I could protect you." The full story emerged over the next few hours. Mom had been running a real estate fraud scheme for 5 years, using her license to facilitate money laundering for a criminal organization. Dad discovered evidence of it by accident, found communications that made it clear she wasn't just involved, but central to the operation. He'd gone to the FBI rather than confronting her directly, had spent 3 months secretly gathering evidence while pretending everything was normal. Tonight, Mom's associates had learned about his cooperation through a leak in the investigation. They'd sent people to his hotel to eliminate the witness problem, but Dad had been paranoid enough to have extra locks and a plan for exactly this scenario. He'd fought them off and escaped, but not before sending us that warning text, knowing that if they'd come for him, they'd come for us next. "She was never planning to hurt you directly," Dad explained, his voice hoarse. "She wanted to grab you before the FBI could, use you as collateral to force me not to testify. But when you ran, when you didn't come home, she panicked. The woman who chased you tonight wasn't your mother protecting her kids. She was a criminal protecting her operation by any means necessary." The trial happened 8 months later. Mom was arrested at the Canadian border trying to flee with false documents and substantial cash. The evidence Dad and the FBI had gathered was overwhelming, documenting years of fraud and money laundering involving millions of dollars. 17 people were charged in the conspiracy, but Mom received the longest sentence, 25 years for fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder, and a list of other crimes that took the prosecutor 10 minutes to read. She never looked at us during the trial, never showed remorse or tried to explain. The woman in the defendant's chair was a stranger wearing my mother's face, and I understood finally that we'd been living with a criminal our entire lives, just never knowing it. Dad testified for 2 days, his voice steady despite visible emotional pain, explaining how he'd fallen in love with someone who didn't really exist, who'd been performing a role the entire time. Becca and I live with Dad now in a different state under partial witness protection. Not full relocation and name changes, but enough security that we sleep without nightmares about SUVs ramming our car. We're both in therapy processing the betrayal and trauma, learning to trust again after having the fundamental safety of family shattered. Dad is rebuilding his consulting business and trying to forgive himself for not seeing the warning signs sooner, for exposing us to danger he never knew existed. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.